You may already be familiar with like bad habits, right? Maybe smoking, maybe biting your nails, all sorts of other things. But there is a such thing as good habits. Good habits are good to have in life, and especially in the military. So if you're considering joining the United States military, there's certain good habits that I would recommend that you develop now before you join, just make it easier to kind of fall in on that military lifestyle. So stick around, because I'm going to give you 5 specific good habits to develop. That video starts right now. These are things that, sure, you'll probably just build and develop while you're in the Army, while you're in the Marines, while you're in the Air Force, whatever branch of service you're going into. But it's a good idea to kind of early develop these habits to just make it easier, right? Sure, if you don't do any of this stuff, you don't develop any of the habits, is it gonna affect you to be able to join, to be able to be successful in the military? No, but it might make things a little bit easier. So I wanna recommend these 5 specific ones that I just think are very common to that military lifestyle, to make sure you have this maybe before you join, so that way when you are actually in the military, it's a little bit easier because you're a little bit more used to them. So let's get into the first one that I have, no particular order really, but the first one that we're talking about is a pretty common one that you'll hear from a lot of military members, maybe even veterans, and that is be early. A common saying I like to tell people is there's no such thing as being on time. You're either early or you're late. So let me give you some examples. If you're told that you need to be somewhere at 9 o'clock, you showing up at 9 o'clock is not being on time. You're late, because in the military, you need to be early, all right? And this may be stressed a little bit more on certain branches of service, right? You know, like in the Army, probably in the Marines, maybe other branches are a little bit more relaxed on this. But nonetheless, even if they are relaxed on it, it's probably just good etiquette, good kind of habit to kind of start getting into. If you're used to it on the civilian side where you're like, I'm supposed to be at work at 9 o'clock, and if I show up right, at 9 o'clock, I walk in that door at 9 o'clock, I'm fine, I'm on time. Not quite like that in the military. On the example of, on the Army side, right, if you have to be somewhere at 9 o'clock, then you probably should be there like at 8:50, maybe 8:40. A lot of it's gonna depend on that leadership, because sometimes the common reference that people are told is 10 minutes prior, but you'll also hear, like, especially in the Army, 10 minutes prior to being 10 minutes prior, because your squad leader says that, yeah, we have this thing at 9 o'clock and 10 minutes prior to be 8:50, but I want you there at 8:40 for my purposes. So it just depends on the leadership, but just kind of developing that habit now, right? You're supposed to be at a doctor's appointment. You're supposed to be, at work. You're supposed to be meeting up with some friends. Try to work on that habit of trying to always be there at least 10 minutes prior, if not a little bit more prior to that, especially for certain branches of services. A lot of this is also done for good reason, because if you're going to a place at 9 o'clock that you've never been to, you were told where it's at, but you've never actually been to that location, you show up there and you're like, crap, this is not the right location. You have a little bit of time to work with to hopefully get to the right location, or find the classroom, or find whatever it is you're looking for. So it's done for certain other reasons too, but that's a good reason too. Just make sure you have a little bit of leeway to kind of work with to still execute the mission on time, execute whatever it is you're supposed to be doing on time. But again, there's no such thing as being on time. You're either early or late. So develop that habit of being early before you join to help you out. The second one is a good habit that some people sometimes already have, and that is usually referencing people by sir or ma'am, because having that kind of, structure in the military is important, because you'll have to do that, where you have to call people like sir or ma'am for like officers, sergeant, first sergeant, those kinds of things, and developing that habit early on just helps you kind of flow into that a little bit better. That's common military etiquette. Like on the Army side, right, you have officers. If they're male, then it's sir. If they're female, then it's ma'am. If they're a non-commissioned officer, if they're a sergeant, then you just call them sergeant, right? Even if they're a staff sergeant, the only time you kind of change that up when you're like talking to one of those individuals is like first sergeants, sergeant majors. If you're talking about like Staff Sergeant Smith, then yeah, you'll say like staff sergeant. But if you're like answering that individual, like they're talking to you on the Army side, and there's, you're supposed to say, yes, sergeant. You don't need to say yes, staff sergeant. It's just not necessary on the Army side. Maybe a little bit more necessary on other branches of services. Like I think on certain other branches, they call their drill sergeants sir or ma'am type of thing. On the Army side, you call them drill sergeant. So get into the habit of just at this point, right, before you join, call in civilians sir or ma'am to be respectful. Kind of helps you build that habit of doing that all the time. Because if you're saying yes sir, yes ma'am, excuse me sir, excuse me ma'am, then it kind of helps you build that habit before you join the military. Some people actually hate that, and they may not want you to call them sir, but maybe just tell them like, hey, sorry, I'm just trying to get into this habit because I'm going to be joining the military. But you'll especially find that with like veterans and stuff too, where they're like, please don't call me sir, please don't call me ma'am type of thing. But if you're trying to build that habit, it's good, especially important on the military side, to be able to reference people by their particular titles, right? Whether that's sir, ma'am, sergeant, first sergeant, whatever the case is. Number 3 is developing a fitness routine. Now, certain branches of service will kind of force you into this anyways, but other branches are a little bit more lenient on this, and it's on you to be able to make sure you stay in shape. That way you can pass their fitness test. On the example, from my experience, on the Army side, right? In the morning, commonly at 6:30 in the morning, you have physical fitness, right? You're gonna be doing fitness with, your platoon, your squad, whatever the case is, to work out for about an hour, maybe a little bit more than an hour, depending on the leadership and what they wanna do for that day. But you're gonna kind of be stuck having to have like a fitness routine. But nonetheless, it can still help you out prior to, because you develop some kind of fitness routine and then you're falling into somebody else's fitness routine. It makes it a little bit easier, right? On other branches of services, they may not force you to do physical fitness in the mornings. It may be on you. They may have certain events that they may have you do, like kind of group activity or group fitness type of thing. But otherwise, it's more on you to make time to be able to work out and stay in shape so you can pass the fitness test. In those kind of situations, it's going to be a little bit more key to make sure you've already developed some kind of fitness plan. You've kind of already gotten into a routine, a habit, as we're kind of mentioning here, of working out maybe in the mornings, maybe it's in the evenings type of thing. In the Army side, it's going to be in the mornings, probably even the same on the Marine side type of thing too, and maybe other branches depending on what unit you're in. But nonetheless, let's say if you develop some kind of routine of like, hey, every morning I work out for an hour before I go to work, right? Having that habit of always kind of doing that and forcing yourself into that will make it a little bit easier to transition to the military, to kind of fall in on that habit, to maintain your physical fitness levels and be able to kind of work out in the mornings, or if you have the leniency to flex on when you're working out, maybe it's in the evenings, whatever, still nonetheless having a habit of working out at a particular time. The 4th one kind of falls in along with that one, because waking up early is going to be an important thing in the military, especially like in initial training. After that, it's still usually pretty early, but that may depend on the branch of service and what you have going on. But building a habit of being able to wake up early, right? If you're someone that early to you is 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, it's not going to work for most branches in the military, right? Early is like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning at the latest kind of a thing. But get into the habit now of being able to wake up early. So that way it's not a big shock when you're in basic training, you're in initial training, right? Boot camp, whatever, and they're waking you up at 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the morning, whatever hell o'clock in the morning they're waking you up at. You're like, holy crap, I'm never up this early, right? Get into that routine, because even if you are kind of used to it, it still kind of sucks probably, depending on you and how long you've been kind of in that routine. But if you're not in that routine and you're like thinking to yourself, 7 o'clock is early, no, in the military, you better be up before that. That's why it's a common thing with a lot of military branches, saying that you're up before the sun comes up, you're awake before most people are awake type of thing, especially on the Army side. Like I was talking about earlier, you have that 6:30 formation to do physical fitness. So that usually means you're waking up at probably like 5 o'clock in the morning, 5:30, somewhere around there, to make sure you have time to get dressed, to shave, get whatever it is you got to do to get ready, and then be there that 10, 20 minutes prior to that 6:30 time. But I would say use it wisely, right? Don't just go and like, well, I'm going to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning and make a cup of coffee and watch some TV type of thing. Maybe use it with that previous one with building your fitness routine, right? Getting up early and then working out. That way you're kind of getting used to and acclimated to waking up early and exercising in the morning. And then it kind of tackles 2 of those habits at the same time. You're working on both the waking up early type of habit and the fitness routine habit. By the way, if I have anything like, some veterans watching this, maybe some people that are currently in the military watching this, and you've got some additional habits that you think might be useful for whatever branch of service you're in, or for any branch of service, make sure you're dropping those down in the comment section down below so we can help people out. And if you have questions, you're wanting to join the military, drop those comments as well, right? We'll try to answer them the best that we can. I'll try to answer some. Other people may try to answer some. Comment down below. I've got one last one that I want to mention in here, but if this is the type of content you're interested in, because you want to join the military, you want to join the Army, you want to be entertained maybe or something for the nostalgia because you're a veteran, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button down below. I post videos once, twice a week sometimes type of thing, so make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, maybe even enable alerts, that way you can stay informed on what I'm putting out and stay up to date on what's going on in the military and in the Army and give you some of that tips and tricks. But nonetheless, let's get into number 5. Number 5 is being clean and organized. And some people may already be a clean person type of thing, and some people may not be, and it may be a shock and a little bit of a struggle to get into that routine. Building that habit of just trying to keep things clean and trying to keep things organized is good, especially like in initial training. At initial training is when it usually is a little bit more of a factor for a lot of the branches, because you'll be in that initial training and you have like a sock drawer, an underwear drawer, your uniforms and everything, and they got to be really nice and organized. That way if you do some kind of inspections, those instructors come come to check on how you're living, you've got everything nice and clean, everything nice and organized in some kind of orderly fashion. Once you're done with initial training, it may depend on your branch of service as far as how much more it stays. Like on the Army side, if you're a single soldier living in the barracks, you got to keep your barracks clean, because occasionally here and there, your leadership's going to be coming to check on you. How often they come check on you depends on the leadership, right? Maybe every day, but they try to get away from in today's Army, but it could still be every day. It could be once a week, could be once a month. It's just going to depend on the leadership. But when they come around, they expect you to have your room clean, to be organized, and all that kind of stuff. It may not be as strict as like it was with initial training, where they're coming through with a white glove to see if you got dust on top of, you know, the cabinets or whatever, and open up your sock drawers to see how you got things rolled. But to a certain extent, it still needs to be somewhat organized. So maybe you start now, right? Your closet at home, you keep it organized and organize shirts by color, or, you know, by a certain type or whatever, you know, work clothes compared to casual clothes, compared to dress clothes or whatever. And maybe you got your sock drawer nice and neat and your underwear drawer nice and neat to kind of help build that habit. You probably should already have a habit of being clean, but nonetheless, if you don't, then you should probably kind of get into that, right? Making sure that you keep things clean. Maybe you're cleaning on a daily basis, just to kind of get into that habit, you know, making sure that everything's nice, because especially like on the Army side, if you live in the barracks, right, you're not supposed to be really leaving dishes in the sink type of thing. You know, you want to make sure your counters are being wiped down, and, you know, nothing's collecting dust at all. And, you know, other branches may be a little bit more lenient with certain things to a certain extent. If you're married and you live off post, they're not going to typically kind of, you know, check that stuff. Technically, I think they can, but they usually don't do any of that kind of stuff. They usually don't bug the people off post. They're usually going to pay more attention to the people living in the barracks. So just make sure you build that habit. However you do so, clean, organized, all that stuff. A lot of great, you know, maybe hopefully tips in here to help you kind of develop some of that stuff and get a little bit better and make you more prepared for joining the military. But don't go taking off just yet, because I got this video right here that is handpicked just for you that I want you to make sure you're checking out, because you got to check it out. All right. Check out the links in the description box. Hit that thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed. I'm Christopher Chaos, and I'll see you next time. See ya.